Welcome to Always Ageless. I'm your host, Valerie Van De Zilver. Here we dive into the vibrant, dynamic world of living life fully as a mature adult. So whether you're an active, mature adult, you're facing challenges of aging, or you're the child of aging parents, this is your go-to show for inspiration, practical advice, and heartwarming stories. From overcoming challenges to celebrating incredible achievements, we bring you interviews with experts and extraordinary individuals who prove that life after 55 is anything but boring. So tune in, stay curious, and join us on this journey to living life as interesting, fun, productive, and safe. Today's guest is our ideal guest for this show. We know that this lady is not only an extraordinary individual, she's created an amazing business. She has an exceptional career and is all of the things that we would say is someone who's always ageless. And you'll know that not long ago, assisted living communities were really the only choice for people who needed help. And today, most seniors and their families want to stay at home. You hear a lot about aging in place, and people want to stay at home, and they would prefer having in-home caregivers as an affordable alternative rather than moving out of their home. And our guest today, Diane, enters the scene. Diane has no cookie cutter franchise approach when it comes to caring for your loved one. She just her personal promise to provide a higher level of care. You're going to love what she has to say. She migrated to this country when she was just 17. She married very young and unfortunately became a widow at a very young age. And she's lived life as a single mom since then. She sings, she dances, she acts, and she believes it is better to give than to receive. And she certainly is the epitome of that. Diane is a volunteer extraordinaire with Chalk Hospital, Children's Hospital of Orange County, the Association of Junior League, and Cancer Society. She's found in all of those places, giving more than most people do. So we found out, though she doesn't know this yet, that we have something in common. She began her professional life as a medical technician at Johns Hopkins Hospital, but at Indiana University, Purdue, and Fort Wayne, she majored in allied health. And I also am a Hoosier girl. I did not go to Purdue, but I grew up in Indiana, so I certainly know about Purdue. And it was there she worked for American Retirement Villas and Manor Care as a business administrative in their assisted living facilities. But it was there that she also obtained her license in residential care facility for the elderly. And it was there that she began to form her own ideas or new ideas about senior care. She established Caring Companions at Home in January of 1999 because she thought she could provide a higher level of care, of in-home care and companionship. At that time, you may know there were only a handful of in-home care companies, especially in Orange County, California, which is where we are today. And people immediately noticed the difference. As business grew, she expanded in 2001 and opened offices in Texas. And in 2004, opened an office in the desert community here in Southern California of La Quinta near Palm Springs to better serve Riverside County and the Coachella Valley. And in 2013, opened in the Inland Empire. So she has a vast exposure and impact, I should say, here in the Southern California area and in Texas. She has remained, however, independently owned and locally operated, which I think makes a big difference because, and she's going to tell us about this. I won't tell you because why. She can tell you about that. But there's no big corporate office making decisions about the healthcare of your loved one or you, and no cookie cutter franchise approach when it comes to your loved one. Just a personal promise to provide a higher level of care. And she's going to invite you to discover the difference today yourself. Diane Mondini, welcome to Always Ageless.
Thank you so much, Valerie, and thank you for the kind introduction.
You are so welcome. So we've heard a little bit about how you got started in the home care business, but what was it that inspired you to open one of the first companies in this area? How did you get from Indiana to Southern California, and how did that come about?
Well, when I was widowed in Baltimore, Maryland, after my husband had gone through Johns Hopkins Medical School and died in his residency, I worked in the Red Cross in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And then I came to work in Southern California. And I actually was brought out here by somebody who worked in a country club in Newport Beach. And so I worked there for a few years, but then I went into assisted living and worked for Gary Davidson, who was the gentleman who started the World Football League, the World Team Tennis, the World Hockey Association. And he had just gone into senior care and he was doing independent care. But then they went into assisted living. So I was with American Retirement Villas for 10 years. We started with just a couple of assisted living facilities and ended with many assisted living facilities in California. We were really the first assisted living company in California. And it then went public and it was taken over by Atria. So people will now say to me, oh, my mother is in Golden Creek. And I say, oh, yes, we built Golden Creek 40 years ago. That was one of our assisted living facilities. But then I left after 10 years. I was stolen away by Manor Care because they were getting into assisted living. They are the largest nursing home company in the country, and they wanted to get into assisted living. So they stole a couple of us away to start their assisted living facilities, and we turned them around, and they were doing very, very well, but they were in Whittier and Brea, and I lived in Newport Beach. But we turned them around. They were doing very well, but then they wanted to go back and run them from Silver Springs, Maryland, as if it was a nursing home, and they failed, couldn't do that. Meanwhile, I'm living in Newport Beach. I'm driving 100 miles round trip. And I said, this is too much. A friend of mine had just come back from Illinois, and her mother lived on a farm, and she had macular degeneration. And she was saying to me, I don't know what to do with my mother. Should I put her in assisted living, or what should I do? And I said, why don't we see if we could find a caregiver to go into the farm and take care of her there? And that's when I got the idea. So when I started, there were only 6 home care companies in Orange County. Now there are over 200. I was the first in this area. I was the first person to ever advertise in the Oasis newsletter in Orange County. And from then, it's just grown. There have been times when I said, oh, I really can't do this. This was years ago. And then I'd get up in the morning and say, of course you can do this, Diane.
Of course you can.
Grew it from something very, very small to a very substantial company over the last 25 years.
And other than your talents and your leadership and your skill of getting things done, with the number of homes, and I heard, Diana, somebody say that there were over 250 home care companies in Orange County. Is that
well?
Accurate number?
I said over 200, but there are a lot. There are a lot of people who are getting into home care because they think, oh, home care, this is the thing of the future, and we're going to make a lot of money. Yeah. But basically, you're taking care of seniors, and you're also taking care of caregivers. So
yes. Oh, yes.
And so you're taking care of caregivers also and giving them a livelihood, because most caregivers could not work out there in the business world. They couldn't work in an office and run a computer, but they're caring, loving people. And they love to take care of seniors. So, I mean, go ahead, Valerie.
So what sets you apart from others? We know you've got experience in building a company and building a team, but as other people come along, what sets you aside from other companies?
I think I have been in the business the longest. Most of my staff have been with me anywhere from 15 to 23 years. I have wonderful staff. I have gerontologists, nurses, social workers as case managers, and they've been with me forever. One of mine was just honored as a visionary woman at Alzheimer's OC luncheon. She's been with me for 23 years, and she's a nurse.
Oh my goodness.
And she keeps trying to retire. And I said, when are you going to retire, Lori? She says, I'm not retiring till you retire. And I say, okay, but just carry on.
Yeah.
But she's wonderful and loving. And she goes out, and what the case managers do, they go out and they do an assessment. They survey the house to make sure it's safe. They meet the family members. They do an assessment of the senior, and then they do a plan of care. And then they come back and they try to find the perfect caregiver.
And so what are the key factors that a family should consider when they're choosing someone to do what you do?
So the main thing they need to do is make sure that they have a licensed home care company, because in this day and age, there's a lot of companies that present themselves as being licensed, but they're registries. So they're sending out people who are independent, who are not covered with any insurance, are not paying any payroll taxes. And so the main thing, they need to go with a reputable licensed home care company. And in 2016, home care companies in California, January, were required to become licensed. So out of all of the hundreds of home care companies, most of them said, we're not going to do that. And they went underground. And then the reputable ones became licensed. And it's very strict to be licensed by the state of California. So the company is licensed, and all of the caregivers have to be individually registered with the state of California. So they go through fingerprinting, strict background checks, training. We have to give them so much training every year. And then they come in and audit us to make sure that we're doing everything correctly. And we always get 100%. But that's the main thing. What we deal with these days is the gray underground. And it's the people, the independent people who people are sending out there. I see it every day where I live. Laguna Woods is full of gray underground people, and seniors are taking advantage. They think, oh, it's a little bit less expensive, but they're really taking advantage. And I see a lot of abuse, a lot of senior abuse.
And we want to go into that a little bit later, because I know that's a subject that we could talk about for a long time. So and you've been in this for so long, I've been in real estate for as long as you have been in that. So tell me, what are some of the biggest industry changes since you first started, and how has your company adapted to those?
So originally, when I started 25 years ago, you could have, quote, a live-in caregiver and charge maybe $200 a day for somebody to go in and live in, and pay a caregiver $120 a day. And then, of course, you've got your costs in between. But still, now, when licensing came and the strict rules in California, anything after 9 hours is overtime. So now you have to pay a caregiver time and a half after 9 hours. A lot of people do not realize this. A lot of people that get an independent caregiver, they'll have a caregiver living in and they're paying them a certain amount. Then the caregiver comes back and say, I wasn't paid time and a half after 9 hours, so I'm going to sue you for $1 million. And so this is the main change, but it's also created problems, because now the cost of home care has gone way high because of all of this overtime that we have to pay. And a lot of seniors are having a hard time affording it. That's probably the main change, all the licensing and the regulations in California.
And are they different in other states?
They are different in other states. When I started home care, nobody was licensed. And then eventually some of the caregivers, some of the states became licensed. All a little different. California is much stricter than most states. There are other states where you can, quote, put in we call them 24-hour caregivers, put in a live-in caregiver and pay a certain amount, and they don't have to pay the overtime. But California is very strict. It's very employer friendly. as you
Yes.
know.
Yes, yes. So then what kind of training and qualifications do your caregivers have to go through to ensure that they provide the best care and that they meet all of your guidelines?
Well, in order to become a registered caregiver, you have to be trained 5 hours when you first come on. And we actually have videos and training companies that train them. So they're trained to deal with heavy people, people who are bedridden and who cannot walk, Alzheimer's, dementia clients. And so we have a lot of caregivers who are trained in all of this. We also are very affiliated with Alzheimer's Orange County, and they provide training. We're very close to them, and they provide training to both caregivers and to seniors. So if there are any seniors who are suffering and they need questions asked, they can call Alzheimer's Orange County and they will help them. They have so many classes and guidelines. But so, and then every year after that, they are required to have training.
They are. Your
Yes,
people
every
are.
year. Yes. So
It's kind of
so
like continuing
it's
education.
continuing education. Every year they get more training. And we keep track of it, and the state comes in and checks that everyone has been trained, and they can do it at home from the computer, and it's fairly simple. It's not easy. I mean, it's not hard to get them trained.
But so you're licensed and all of your caregivers are registered.
Mhm.
That's how it works.
Right. They're all registered with the state. So you can go on and you can look up a caregiver on the California Department of Social Services. You can go on to that website and you can check out a home care company to make sure that they're licensed. You can also go on and check out a caregiver to make sure that they're registered.
And what if anybody wanted a reference on the caregiver themselves? Do you ever provide that, or do you just say you need to take our word for it that it's someone that we watch and that they've been with us for X number of years or months?
Oh, they can get a reference. We also have a bio on all of our caregivers. So it's a picture and a little bio of where they came from, how long they've been in home care. And we usually send that out to our clients so that they can see a little bit about the caregivers that they have. But yes, they can get a reference. We've given out many references, but they normally don't ask for it because they know if they're registered with the state, they've gone through this very hard vetting that they're good.
And then does the caregiver, is there a cost to them also to be registered?
The cost to them is $35 to become registered by the state. And then they have to go and have a fingerprint test.
Sure.
And we do e-verify, that's free, but it usually is a cost. It's about $135. And sometimes we will help them with that. We'll help them with the cost. And then when we place them, we'll deduct it from their pay a little bit at a time.
But it's not prohibitive. I mean, that wouldn't be the only reason.
Oh, no.
So I'm wondering then, when someone is thinking about what company to go to work for, why would they not want to go to work for a company like yours that's licensed? Why would they want to go to one that's not licensed?
Because the registries, domestic referral companies, they are independent contractors, and so they don't have any taxes taken out of their payroll. But they also don't have any workers' comp insurance or any kind of liability insurance. But they would make more money because they're not having the payroll taxes taken out. A lot of caregivers do not realize that when they get their paycheck and they have their payroll taxes taken out, my company is matching those payroll taxes. And we tell them, when you get to be in your 60s, you're going to have Social Security, you're going to have Medicare.
Right.
But caregivers sometimes who work from paycheck to paycheck have a hard time understanding that. They don't look to the future and think, oh, I'm going to have all of this when I'm in my 60s because of the payroll taxes.
Right, because somehow that money gets just happens to go away. Not very many
Right,
people save that difference. I know.
right.
So how do you match caregivers to ensure that they're a good fit for both parties? Because I'm sure, I think I told you, my mom's 104, about to be 105 next month. I mean, she's not always easy to live with. And so how do you match people? And I've also heard that one thing about having someone from a company like yours is that if it's not a match, even if you match them and they don't end up getting along, that you'll find them someone new. So can you talk about
Oh,
that?
absolutely. We do that all of the time. Somebody will say, so and so isn't a match, she talks too much, or whatever. But we'll find somebody else immediately. But my case managers go out and they do a complete plan of care, and they find out exactly what the client needs. They might need breakfast in the morning, bathing, running to the doctor's appointments, going grocery shopping, fixing the meals. And so then they come back, and we have a scheduling system. So everything's in the scheduling system. We then do the plan of care in the scheduling system, talk to the staff coordinators and say, this is the kind of caregiver that we need for Mrs. Smith. And then the staffers go about finding the perfect caregiver, because the caregiver needs to know the hours, the pay, and how and what the case is all about.
And then if someone can't show up for work or they're sick, then what do you do in a case like that?
They call us the minute they know they can't show up, and we will send somebody else. Sometimes the client will say, oh, I'm fine today, don't worry about it, I'll be fine by myself. But normally we will automatically find somebody else for them, and it happens all the time. The call-offs these days, the turnover in caregivers and the call-offs. And we just discussed this the other day. I'm on the California advisory board for the Home Care Association of America out of Washington, D.C. And we have a Southern California advisory board and a Northern California. And we discuss all of these things. And we were just discussing the other day the turnover in caregivers these days and the difficulty in finding caregivers. That's another topic, because the wave of the future, by the time we will need care, there will not be any caregivers to help us, because it's the younger generation does not want to go into caregiving. And
why is that?
Well, you see this younger generation in their 20s and 30s, they don't even want to go to school and think about caregiving. They just don't. So by the time we will need it, the 50% of people will need it, and the other 50% will be taking care of them, but they won't be caregivers. And it's a major problem, especially here in California.
And why California more than another state?
Because I think we have a lot of seniors here in Southern California. I mean, you can see the studies that they have, and we have a benchmark study that comes out every year, and it comes from a company called Home Care Pulse, and they survey every single home care company in the country. Not all of them participate, but they survey all the companies in the country, and they ask them all of the questions. How much did you make? How much did you pay your caregiver? Da, 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 da. And this huge 3-inch binder comes out. It's the benchmark study that will tell you, according to where you fall on the slide, if you're one of the top producers, if you're one of the bottom, it'll tell you how many staff you should have, how many caregivers you should have, the turnover rate and everything. The turnover rate right now, when I started, was maybe 25%. It's now 60% caregivers. So you might have a caregiver, you bring on a caregiver and you place them with a client, but then they're also working for another company, and the other company puts them on another client. So what you find now is caregivers will work for maybe 6 different companies, and whoever gives them the biggest job, that's who they'll go with. And then we just recently had a caregiver come back after 2 years, because she'd gone out and had a private client for 2 years, and now she's come back, and we've placed her with clients, and she's very happy. But this is what happens. It's a juggling act. So
Oh, I'm
what you
sure it
need to
sounds
know
like it is.
too, it's a juggling act. That's why we have a scheduler. But you might have one caregiver with six clients, and you might have a client with six caregivers.
So I
Because
saw, yeah, I saw on your website, on your website, a list of all the services you provide and the different conditions that you will accept or that you know about if someone has different needs, I should say, of a
right,
client, and then you match them. That is a lot. You have a lot of things that you mentioned, everything from taking out trash and, like you said,
right.
fixing breakfast and
Mhm.
helping to bathe and all of those things. That is a big list.
It's a huge list, but there's also rules and regulations in California that a caregiver has to do mostly personal care. So they have to do 80% personal care, and they can only do less than 20% housekeeping.
Oh,
So,
really?
right. And we get all the time, we'll have a caregiver call and say, "Oh, Mrs. Smith, she's having me sweep the floors and clean the oven." And we have a list of things that they can do and they can't do. They can't do heavy care. They can't scrub floors. They can clean the kitchen after they fixed a meal. They can clean the bathroom after they've given the client a shower or a bath. But it has to be less than 20% housekeeping.
So what if someone, and so if someone needs more care or wants more care along that line, then they need to hire a housekeeper.
They need a housekeeper, yes. Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. Now, there's also a term called home health, but you are not home health, correct? You are home care.
We are home care, so we are non-medical home care. So we cannot do anything medical. We cannot give injections. We cannot work with give insulin. We can't even take blood pressure or somebody's temperature. And so if somebody needs more care, they need to go with a home health company. But home health is a lot more expensive than home care.
Can
And
you make sure someone takes their pills?
yes, we can do medication reminders. The family usually can drop the pills or whatever, and then we can say, "Mrs. Smith, it's 4 o'clock. You need to take your pills now." And yes, that's what we do. We do medication reminders.
Okay, all
But
right.
there's a fine line there too. It's and the state has been up in Sacramento. They've been trying, especially with COVID and the pandemic, they've been trying to allow caregivers to do more to help the home health people. So instead of calling and saying to a home health nurse, "You need to come out and give so and so his medicine," they should allow the home care aides to be able to do that up to a point. But it's never passed in California. They're pretty strict.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. That's
It
unfortunate.
is. It really is.
Gosh, I mean, this sounds like certainly um, much bigger issue than I certainly ever anticipated. And I can see that it's so important that you work with a company like yours who can not only send a good caregiver, but manage all of the processes.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yes.
seems like that's pretty difficult thing to do. So someone comes into your, I call you today and I want someone to come and care for my mom, but only like 3 mornings a week. Do you have situations like that, or must it always be a full-time caregiver?
Well, most companies have a limit of maybe 4 hours, 5 days a week. When I started, we had 2 hours, a 2 hour minimum. We've now gone to 3 hours, 3 days a week. So that is our minimum, 3 hours, 3 days a week. And we have a lot of clients that have 3 hours, 3 days a week, because sometimes that's all that people are looking for. And normally these clients then go to 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, 24 hours. So we do take the 3 hours, 3 days a week, but a lot of companies won't take that. They think it's not worth their time to do that.
And when you say that they end up going to more hours, is that because they just like your person and they're more comfortable with them and want the companionship more? Is that what happens?
Yes, or maybe have had a time in the hospital and they come home and they need more care. That's often the case. Our clients are always in and out of the hospital for one reason or another, and then they come back and they add another shift, or they add an overnight shift.
Do you have a lot of people who stay with your clients overnight?
Most of our caregivers prefer longer shifts. So if we have somebody that we call a 24-hour shift, which used to be live-in and you could just charge one fee, now you have to charge 3 8 hours. So you have 3 8-hour caregivers or 2 12-hour caregivers.
But if you have 12-hour caregivers, then you still have an overtime situation?
Yes, 9 hours is a regular and 3 hours is overtime.
So even if someone worked 12 hours, 2 days, that still is 2 days have overtime.
If they only work one day, that there's no overtime. That's because the first 9 hours goes into the first day and the 3 hours goes into the second, so there's no overtime. But most of the time they want 5 days of 12-hour overtime. And then also we cannot put caregivers into people's homes longer than maybe 4 days and 3 days, because the caregivers then go into overtime.
Right.
After 40 hours. So it's after 9 hours and after 40 hours. So what it's really done, it's cut down a lot of the caregivers' hours. So then they have to go to other companies to make it up.
So if your client or the family wants that caregiver longer, then are you able to charge them overtime?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And you pass that cost on to the
overtime. If they're willing to pay the overtime, then we can charge it. Yes.
Okay. And you just pass that on to the family.
Yes. Oh, yeah. We ask them first. We say, if you keep so and so the next day, it means 8 hours of overtime, and they'll say, okay, we'll pay the overtime. But most of them won't. They don't want to. It's expensive. Mm-hmm.
So then you just literally have 3 different people or 2 different people that go during the day.
Yes.
During that.
Not during the day, but maybe during the week.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
During that period.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. What role, if any, does technology play in your business? And has that changed in the past years?
When we first started, we had no technology. So we had a whiteboard up on the wall, and with the names of the clients and the caregivers and the hours and everything. And then technology, we started getting scheduling systems. But it was hard for my staff to get used to the scheduling systems. So one day I went in on the weekend and took the whiteboard down, which meant that they were forced to use the scheduling system. And after they got used to it, they loved it. How did we ever live without this? Because you have to have that. We use quite a bit of technology. I have a list of all the technology. We use our caregivers, when they come in to apply, they can apply online, and then they can sign things from DocuSign, through DocuSign, which is technology. We can our contracts we send to our clients, they sign through DocuSign. We do use quite a bit of technology.
Anything new? I was at a conference recently, Diane, where they were talking about artificial intelligence and how that's being woven into the caregiving industry. Anything that you've seen that, in fact, one lady talked about how they use it for scheduling by anticipating if a client is if you see people who are having these conditions, that they're going to have this situation. If they're sick for 4 days, they're going to get, released on the 5th day or whatever, and then how they're using that into scheduling.
We don't use it in scheduling. We've used it maybe to do blogs and articles and things like that. I have used AI, but not for scheduling.
Not for that. Interesting. We have a guest coming on next week who will be who's going to talk about AI in medicine and the advancement of drugs and so forth by what it's learned putting data together. Anyway, so we've talked about the different services that you offer. Anything unusual that you offer that everybody else doesn't, or anything that kind of sets you aside because you do offer that care you talked about the shorter shifts, which I think is great to know. We certainly could use that in our situation. So that's good to know. I'm sure you probably don't market that because you really don't want to have the shorter shifts, but yet I'm sure that's something that makes you more valuable to some people.
Well, the thing with the shorter shifts that I learned on a meeting last week is that a lot of companies are just getting shorter shifts these days because the larger shifts are going to the gray underground. So somehow they're managing to get the larger shifts, and so all the home care companies are getting the smaller shifts. But we also are on call 24/7. And we answer calls all times of the day and night. And if we have a problem, somebody will go out. And because I also have nurses and gerontologists on staff, if somebody's in a real bind, they will run down. If somebody, needs to be turned in bed or something, and the caregiver didn't show up or something major happened, they will run out and take care of it. So we've done that on many occasions.
And are your calls generally from your clients or from your workers, your staff?
It's generally from the caregivers calling to say that they can't go the next day because of some reason. And so then the person on call has to find somebody else to go.
So I'm sure it's happened that someone interviews you and, oh, yes, we're interested, but Diane, we don't really need your service right now. And then something happens. We talk about it in our group as the call comes, right? You get the call and you find out that your dad has to be released from the hospital, or something else happens, that mom fell and now you need care. So how much notice does someone need to give you if they want to use your services? If they call you and say, okay, I know, Diane, I should have called you back. I know I interviewed you. I know I interviewed you twice. I know I keep calling you, but now, Diane, please forgive me. I need your help.
No, we can usually get somebody there almost immediately. We used to say 24 hours, but now my staff can usually get somebody there almost immediately. I have to tell you, one of my neighbors used an independent male caregiver for her husband who was not doing very well. And I was a little shocked that she went with the male independent caregiver, but she called me in a panic one morning and said, Diane, my caregiver just said he can't come back tomorrow, has to take care of family members. And this is what happens with the independents. And so we sent over, well, my assessment person went over immediately, did an assessment. We sent over a couple of caregivers. And then, of course, he passed away about a month later. And she came up and gave me a big hug. And she said, oh, my goodness, I should have used your caregivers earlier. They were wonderful. They loved him and he loved them. And why didn't I go with you originally? This is what we hear all the time.
And it's the story that we hear in life over and over and over again, that you get what you pay for. And
yes. But another problem we have is a lot of pushback from the clients, because the children will want their parents to have care, but the parents refuse. They refuse to have care and they don't want anyone in their house and this, that, and the other. And then the next thing you know, something will happen. They'll fall and break a hip. They'll end up in the hospital, and then they're forced to have somebody. So what we say is get somebody in there ahead of time so that they can get used to somebody, and then maybe they won't fall and break their hip, and maybe they won't end up in the hospital.
That was one of my questions for you. For adult children who are struggling with the decision to bring in a home care provider, what advice would you give to them? I think you just answered it, but is there anything else?
I tell them you have to become the parent. You have to become the parent. You are now responsible for taking care of your parents. So you have to become the parent. And it's not easy. And I can tell the story of a friend of mine who's a psychologist who one time had a 90-year-old mother and a 60-year-old son, and said the son was acting like a 5-year-old. Oh yes, mother, whatever, mother. It's very, very hard, but you have to, for the good of your parent, you have to be strict, and you give them options. Okay, mother, this, you can go into an assisted living, you can have home care, you can give them options, make a list and have them choose, but get them some kind of care. Now, I can honestly say I worked in assisted living for 15 years. Assisted living is wonderful. However, you can't put somebody from their home into an assisted living facility after a certain age because they won't survive. It's too frightening for them. I always say after the age of 85, they will only last a few months.
Is that true? And tell me about that.
It is. It's a fact. It is a fact. And so when I see on my notes, so and so wants to put her mother in assisted living and she's 97, I'll say, have you told her she won't last a month? It is a fact. I've seen it over and over again. People don't believe it. They just don't believe it. Because you're moving somebody who's lived in their home their whole life and you're putting them into a brand new place. It's frightening, especially if they have any kind of dementia. It's so frightening for them.
It's very interesting. We have a personal situation because we've going through that. My mom always lived by herself, except until my dad died. The two of them were always independent. They were married 78 years.
Wow.
My dad died when he was 99, which has now been 6 years ago. My mom's going to be 105 next month and lives by herself. And of course, we had a little mini stroke a couple weeks ago, and now we just can't put her there by herself. But the fear that comes, Diane, and so I know I'm not the only one who's the adult child of an aging parent, although my mom is certainly aged. But there are the worries, the fears that we're going to have a stranger in with mom overnight. Do we need to install cameras? Right? What do we need to do to make sure that person is going to be okay in that home? How do we deal with that?
Well, go with a reputable company, meet the caregivers ahead of time. If you want, put cameras in the house. People put cameras in the house all the time. And I had cameras in my house here for my mother. I had my mother living with me for 8 years. She lived in Tennessee.
Bless
you. My parents were together 70 years. My father died. I brought my mother kicking and screaming to California at the age of 86, a year older. At the age of 86, she came kicking and screaming, and she had a wonderful life. She lived another 8 years and was happy as a lamb. I had a camera in my living room so I could check and see what the caregiver was doing. My mother sitting there with her earphones on, listening to TV, and they'd go out shopping every day in the car. And she had a wonderful life. And at her memorial, I had about 150 people. I said, how could I have this many people? Who knew my mother? And they said, you took your mother everywhere. She went to the theater. She went to the yacht club. She went, all over with you. She met everybody you know. And she had wonderful caregivers for 8 years because I worked.
Yeah, and I do. I can't care for myself. I can't, which is one of the reasons for this show is I know I'm not the only person facing these challenges. And I know that there's other people that are worried and have these same concerns. And there are people on one side of the country, and we hope that they're listening to us who have parents here who are saying, my mom lives in California. I haven't seen her for 10 years or 5 years, and I don't know what to do. I feel bad. I know she needs care. I have no idea where to start. And I believe, Diane, they need people like you and I to be their resource, to give them suggestions, people they can trust, because you just don't know. And you can say, yes, you need to be the parent. And I had to be this week. I had to make a decision. I had to say to my mom, no, we are not doing that. You are coming home with me because you're not staying here until we get you more care, blah, blah, blah. And, you have to make those decisions, but sometimes you don't know what's right.
No.
So what would you say to that person that's calling from out of state and says, I don't know what to do? Do you go
So,
there and look at their parents? What do you do?
oh yeah, we would do an assessment and check out the parents. So we have a lot of people out of state
You do.
that we take care of. And we had somebody once, they lived on the East Coast. The mother was all alone here in California. We took care of her for about 15 years until she died. We installed a new washer dryer, got her a new kettle. I mean, we literally took care of her completely. We do that. I was going to tell you something else about, I was going to tell you another story.
Please do.
Recently, I had another neighbor who was the former mayor of Newport Beach twice, and then a judge. And then he became a judge, and he was a judge for the rest of his life. And a couple of years ago, his wife had a knee replacement, and it ruptured. Something ruptured, and he called me and he said, "Diane, it's always been the two of us. We've never had anyone in our home. What do we do? We're just not used to having, we don't have any children or anything." And so we put a caregiver with her, and she went in every day and took care of the wife while he was at the courthouse. And then after 3 months, when she was recovered, he called me and he said, "What am I going to do? Maria, I come home and there's a meal on my table. She strips my bed and she does my laundry. And what am I going to do?" And I said, "Well, Steve, you're probably going to have to do it yourself now." And he said, "No, no, no, I'll have my wife do it." But that's what happens. They were so adverse to having anyone in their home. And after 3 months, they are still in touch with the caregiver. They're still in
Oh,
touch with the caregiver after all these years because they loved her so much.
well, I can tell you at the end of this call, I'm going to give you a call and
Okay.
have you send out someone to take care of my mom. So you've told us some great stories, and we appreciate that so much because I know there, as I said, I know there are other people like me who are either younger than I am or the same age as me. And we say, we have become the adult children of aging parents. We're
Mm-hmm.
in the sandwich generation. We're the boomers. We're
Mm-hmm.
the children of aging parents because our parents are living longer and
Mm-hmm.
we're going to live longer. And
Yes.
there's 11,000 people a day who are becoming 65, and it's going to be soon, as you said, where we're all going to be this age and we
Mm-hmm.
need help. So how can we reach you? What's the best way to find you? And we've heard the one word I have to tell you we hear in our shows, no matter who we interview, is we ask what should people do, and we have a 4-letter word on this show. And it's plan. No matter whether we're talking about Alzheimer's or home care, moving out of state or retiring, everyone says you should plan ahead.
Well, here's another thing. The Council of Aging in Orange County has just put out, they're starting a program, and I met with them last week. They picked my brain because they want to prepare people of what they should do when they're younger in order to prepare for when they're older, because most people don't even think about it.
And don't
And
want to, and don't want
no,
to. We
they
don't want
don't
to
think
prepare to
about it.
be old. No.
No, and I see it in my business. People never plan ahead. They have no idea how they're going to pay for their home care. Who's going to take care of them when they get older? So I'm working with Council on Aging and putting that thing together. And they picked my brain, and I had a whole list of things. You got to have all the credit card. You got to know the people to. You've got to have um, an IRA or a
Whatever.
401k. You have to think ahead. You have to long-term care and all this stuff. I have a list of about 100 things, and I gave them my list, and they already had a list, but they added a little bit more to it. But it's very necessary to start teaching people now in their 60s how to prepare for when they're in their 80s and 90s. Very important.
So how can people find you?
Okay, so my website is caringcompanionsathome.com. My phone number is 949-574-0750. We also have an 800 number, 800-950-0750, or info, INFO, at caringcompanionsat.com, at home.com, ATHOME.com.
caringcompanionsat-home.com.
Yes, info.
Excellent.
But
Excellent.
another thing we do, Valerie, is people will call us from Northern California or from another area or out of state. And since I'm very involved with Home Care Association of America out of Washington, D.C., I will say, a friend just called me whose mother is in Colorado and in Denver. And I said, okay, let me look at all the home care companies in Denver who are licensed and belong to this organization, Home Care Association of America. And then I send them that list. And then they find a caregiver, because then they know they're getting reputable companies.
Certainly. And I'm sure you've developed that referral network with people that you're also familiar with, as involved as you are on a national level.
Yes.
I'm sure that you know many of these people. And the same thing with us, Diane, is that when people are, we hear from someone or someone calls and says, my parents need to downsize or they need to declutter or whatever, and maybe they do want to go into assisted living. We do have a network throughout the country. And so we're able to help people no matter where they live. And if their children live out of state or their relatives live out of state, and their loved one lives here, of course, we're happy to help them as well. So we want people to, first of all, we have about 1 minute left. Is there anything else you'd love to tell our audience, our viewers and our listeners? Because this will be available on YouTube and on our internet web, as well as on the radio show, which is Always Ageless on Monday afternoons. What are your parting words to our audience?
Well, this has been delightful. I could go on and on and on. There's so much I could tell you, but I basically tell people, don't wait. If you think your parents are going downhill a little bit, if you see little changes in their lifestyle, don't wait and get a caregiver early so that they can integrate into the family, and then hopefully nothing bad will really happen. Just don't wait. Go ahead.
Plan.
And plan for the future. And if you're in your 60s, plan now for who's going to take care of you and how you're going to do it when you need home care.
Absolutely, because chances are some of us won't need it at 60, but we'll live to be 80, 90, or my mom's age 104, and we'll still be friends, and we'll still be chatting, and we'll say, I think we should get somebody pretty soon.
I think it's wonderful. Your mother is going to be 105. That is amazing.
October 18th, she will be.
That's wonderful.
She's an amazing lady. Lives by herself, cooks by herself, takes care of herself. But she's getting a little older, so she needs a caring companion at home. And we're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
I look forward to having you.
And things can happen overnight, too. Yes.
I know. Thank you so much for being our guest today. You have so much information, and there's so many things I didn't even have a chance to ask you about for dementia care and all these other things that we do want to talk again. But thank you so much. It was our honor to have you. And we thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you so much. And we'll chat again soon. Thank you, Valerie.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.